I'm just going to pass on to my colleague Kit, who is an attainment advisor with Falkirk and has a STEM background himself and has always been really passionate about exploring the use of STEM. So Kit, pass over to you to talk to us a wee bit about kind of the Scottish Attainment Challenge and data too. So thanks, Kit.
Thank you. So the first thing I'm going to do is post something, which is a link to a sway, which will give you dozens of hours of reading and videos and games and all sorts of fun activities around the Scottish Attainment Challenge. And that was taken from our national launch. So if you know all about this, please fall asleep for the next 3 minutes. Otherwise, I'll take a 3-minute rush through the Scottish Attainment Challenge. There is an expanded mission with the Scottish Attainment Challenge, which again I've put into the chat pane. And the Scottish Attainment Challenge is now built around a framework for recovery and accelerating progress. We've changed the resource allocation so that all local authorities as well as schools are getting some level of resource. Over 97% of schools are getting their pupil equity fund allocation, which they know they're going to get for the next 4 years. So that's set, and that's based on free school meals and a couple of other complicated calculations. And each local authority is now getting a set of resources based upon families living in poverty. So in the old Scottish Attainment Challenge, where we had challenge authorities and we had challenge schools and the university authorities, that's been changed. So each local authority has received a particular allocation of money, and for many local authorities that will increase over the 4-year period of the SAC, and there's enhanced support going in around SAC. One of the other big issues that has come to the fore is that in order to accelerate progress, then we need to put a bit of expectations into the system. So schools and local authorities and not schools are expected to set what is called stretch aims. Schools are going to be setting their own targets around what they want to achieve, but local authorities are now being asked to set stretch aims. So Julie, if you could move on to the next slide. And stretch aims are divided into core groups, into 2 groups. There's some core stretch aims and there's one's called Core Plus, but for this purpose, these are the core stretch aims that all local authorities will be asked to identify some targets around what level they want to get to. And some of these are specifically related to what we're talking about today. And I suppose the one that is closely related to that is the 4th one. I was going to say number D, but that's a bit Irish, and I'm not Irish at all. It's the proportion of 16 to 19-year-olds participating in education, employment or training based on the annual participation measure produced by Skills Development Scotland. And I think for everyone on the call, it's about the quality of that destination. And we all know that some of the destinations, the quality isn't great and the earning potential of the learner entering those areas is not great, and the chance of that learner moving out of poverty and in some of these positive destinations is reduced. But STEM offers an opportunity for many learners to move into career pathways that offer them significant earning potential and that potential to move themselves out of poverty in the long term, which is what we are really wanting to look at. So if you want any more information about SAC and the Attainment Challenge, you can look at what I've posted in terms of the sway, but please get in touch with your attainment advisor. Every local authority has one, and they're more than happy to come to talk to you or a group of your colleagues to try and support you in understanding that. And the last slide in my wee section is moving into the SDS Data Hub. Now, not everybody on this call will have access to this information, but they will have access to someone who knows about it. And that allows us to identify information about where learners have gone and how they've been successful beyond school. And it's based on their SCQA number, and allows us to track what's happened to them. So who went where when they first left school and what has happened to them as they've moved on from school. And that is information that your local authority can get you. There's somebody that has a login to that. And it may be something that you wish to continue to explore. Every school has access to that information as well, and it really allows us to build a longer term picture of where we need to support pupils so that they can maintain a successful destination. And if they've gone into something in college, was that successful, and where did they go after that college course? So I recommend that you do a bit of asking around and you throw in some of these words, but the SDS Data Hub is probably an underused resource and has huge amounts of information that can be gathered to promote the activity that we're talking about at the minute, and also to allow us to measure the impact of any activity that we put in place subsequent to this. So that's me, unless anybody's got anything they want to ask me. Silence is golden, so I'm going to pass on to Fiona.
Thanks, Kit. So I suppose, obviously there is a huge amount of data that's out there, and I think one of the things that we can be doing is looking at data through an equalities lens. So to help with that, we have produced a guide for secondary schools and primary and early years as well, 2 separate guides, with sort of suggestions as to what data you might want to look at through this lens. It's not an exhaustive list, neither are we suggesting go out and collect it all and look at it all. But what's in that data guide is sort of questions around the data through that lens, prompting thinking around sort of unconscious bias, as well as sort of how stereotyping might have fed into what's in the data, but also how the data is actually analysed, so whose voices are heard. So examining sort of both quantitative and qualitative in relation to sort of wider ethos, thinking about those learner perceptions, behaviour and values, and really sort of highlighting that whole setting approach as well. And we hope that that can lead to the identification of the starting point. And as I said before, sort of thinking about that wider ethos, which might contribute to or perpetuate stereotypes that can affect attainment and then life and career choices, as we spoke about already. Thinking about what barriers might exist as well with gender or other protected characteristics. We also hope that the guides can provide that information too. In addition to the guides, we have also got a self-evaluation framework, which is designed to complement all the other self-evaluation frameworks that are out there. Again, hopefully it's got some kind of useful prompts around what you can do to improve the diversity and equalities in your setting. It does have a focus on gender, but each section's kind of got the overarching theme, followed by whether you're exploring, adopting or embedding it, and then some sort of examples of practice which might be useful starting points. So that section, the highly effective practice section, you'll see a clip of that on the screen actually in the yellow. People have fed back to us that these indicators of effectiveness are the most useful elements of that. So section 4 of the self-evaluation framework covers curriculum, skills, career education and choice. So for the purposes of this call, these might be the most useful places to start and have a look at, because the framework itself can be quite overwhelming. So I just wanted to sort of highlight those, and again, perhaps kickstart that thinking around looking at data in that way, and some considerations that might not have been thought about. And yes, as Julie has mentioned, we are currently working on CLD versions of these as well. So we hope to have those, get those piloted this year and hopefully produced at the start of next year. So with that in mind, we wanted to sort of come back to a bit of discussion again and sort of consider how might the use of data support diversity in your STEM context. So I suppose it's thinking about that learner journey, but also disaggregating the data. So again, we're inviting you to pop any comments onto the Jamboard. It's slide 2 on the Jamboard for this one, and equally welcoming people if they would like to unmute anything you've tried, anything that you think would be useful, please do feel free to come in.
Thanks, Fiona. So we'll just give folks a wee minute just to kind of again digest, thinking around the Scottish Attainment Challenge and broadening that out, and the role of local authorities with the kind of stretch aims, the use of the Data Hub. And actually that was something as a parent, if you've got children yourself or youngsters that you work with, again, it could be sort of from 4th year onwards to guidance staff or kind of home tutors. Young people will be asked sort of maybe what their intended destination might be beyond school, and again that kind of gets entered into the Data Hub and tracks from sort of 4th year. Certainly my children have had that experience as well, so again just thinking about what's that destination looking like can feed into the Data Hub. And as Fiona said, there's lots of information that's really useful in the guides too. So while I've been able to just fill in a wee bit of the space, we have a few people asking a question here. I'll just maybe move the post-it notes so we can see them. Somebody asking, do you have access to all the data that you need? That's a kind of really good question, because sometimes we can ask ourselves, what is the data that we need? What will tell us the story behind learners' experiences and what they might be choosing and where they might be heading to? So a kind of really good question there for us as practitioners to ask there. I see Kit's got his hand up. I'll just maybe just pick up the other 2 post-it notes that we've got coming through just now before I invite Kit to come in. So other folks saying identifying target groups for STEM learning. And again, remembering that STEM learning can be that kind of science, technology, engineering and maths, or it can be that sort of more project-based ideal perspective as well. So again, thinking about, depending on our context, what that could look like and what the target groups, any sort of interventions that we may have may look like. Another kind of comment that someone's popped in there, which data allows us to see trends so we can try to intercept and mitigate barriers for lots of people. Yeah, so again, just being aware of some of that, the situations that go on that can impede maybe learners' progress or engagement with it, and trying to remove that before that can happen is a kind of really good move. Kit, do you want to just come back in? I saw your hand was up there.
That was, I put the data question in.
Oh, you did? Right, great. You wanted us to think that way. That's super. Thank you.
Do you have access to what? And if the answer to that question is no, what data is missing? I have my own opinion that we don't have access to the appropriate data because we can't trace learners through their entire learner journey. And how does the data from your primary school talk to your secondary schools? How does your BGE data talk to your senior phase data? How does all that link to their destinations, and can you walk a learner back through a journey and see why they were successful in their journey? Do you have access to that data? And if you don't, how do we do that?
A really nice provocation there. Thank you, Kit. Lots for people to think about and to digest, and depending on where you are and how you fit in with that kind of learner journey and your role, I think there's certainly lots of kind of conversations that you might want to have on the back of this with those that you connect with in your kind of setting and beyond. Somebody's popped in here sharing the aspects of local positive destination data could encourage current pupils giving relevant examples and role models. I absolutely think that kind of ties in back with one of the themes that Fiona alluded to earlier about kind of STEM being perceived as for white middle class grade males, and yet actually, as we're talking about, we all use STEM in our everyday lives. And that has been increasingly important, just the kind of the science aspect of STEM and being outdoors through the pandemic and beyond. So yeah, absolutely sharing those positive stories to inspire children. So yes, actually, it can be like me or young people or learners, depending on who we work with. And that's actually just the blue point post-it note that somebody's picked up there. Beginning STEM activities earlier on for children can make a really big difference. I'm just going to invite Fiona to come in and share your thoughts, Fiona.
Hi, yeah, I've just seen it's the pink post-it note that somebody's written. I really enjoy that one because it's talking about language choice and course choice booklets, and whether it's more masculine and feminine, and actually who's that likely to appeal to in terms of self-identity. So for me, that's a really important point, and hopefully the data guides go into that a little bit more as well to explore that theme. So thank you for that one.
Thanks, Fiona. And just before we move on from this discussion, and we invite Margie from Braze to share their experience of considering this with us, there's just that little kind of post-it note right in the middle that said it could lead to focused discussions with learners to establish reasons as to why they don't choose STEM and what would make it more appealing to them, so that we can learn from learners' experience and sort of adapt our practice beyond that to impact positively on future learners and future generations, so we don't have that repeat of the 35-year gap as shown by gender at the start in terms of the graphs. So thank you so much for your contributions to the Jamboard and to the conversation there.